All right, so now we're going to talk about Hispanic and Latino communities. And because I am not part of this community, if after I'm done, there's something that you want to share about the community that I missed, please, I'm encouraging you to do that. So some terms that may be offensive: spick, wetback, beaner. And Latinos were here like 500 or more years before the U.S. was even founded. And that often gets overlooked and ignored. So there are a lot of motivating factors that led to the fleeing of the country of origin. It could have been lack of resources, the abuse from the government, extreme poverty, unlivable conditions. And the word of the land of opportunity was very appealing. And they were very determined to create a higher quality of life for themselves and their families. And many of them were willing to risk everything to make sure that that happened. The actual process, we're in the historical context now, the actual process of that happening, there were dire situations that either threatened and or claimed the lives of many immigrants coming into the U.S. There were some families who were left behind while the male immigrant sought work to be able to support. And they were met with a lot of resistance upon arrival. So there was no welcoming with open arms, we're so glad you're here. It was nothing like that. And then life in the U.S. This community has been cast as job stealers of the American people. A lot of families in this community are living at or below the poverty level. And even though they are an integral part of the U.S. labor force, they still exist in the margins. They're still pushed away in the margins, almost as if they don't matter. They're accepted as hard workers, but not desired as permanent citizens. So people will readily admit, yes, you work very, very hard. Don't want to make you a documented citizen, though. So let's talk about this macro system. Politically, there's a strong resistance to immigration reform. There's still the intergenerational oppression. And there's a lot of commonalities between the Black community and the Latino community when it comes to political and economical. They have a lot of similar struggles. A lot of racial profiling. So you all remember in Arizona, the law officials authorized to check immigration status of anyone that they suspected of being in the U.S. illegally. How they drew the conclusion of whether or not that person was a suspect or not, that is just straight out racial profiling. Those in immigration detention centers were treated inhumanely and denied the right to attorneys because of language barriers. In the economic systems, companies take full advantage of immigrants by underpaying them but overworking them. The American culture demands that the community speak English when you are in the presence of English-speaking people, devaluing the culture's native language. The only time it's sought after is when you're in the workplace and they need someone to speak the language to a customer that they're serving. Then it's acceptable. But once you're done there, we need you to go back to speaking English. Many Americans view the community as people who need to go back to their own country when many Americans are not from here either, or simply don't see this community as significant contributors of the socioeconomical structure of the country. With the EXO system, the educational systems has a huge disparity. There's racial profiling in schools. Arizona banned the studies of Mexican Americans. Young undocumented immigrants can legally attend school, but they do not have access to opportunity to work, vote, receive financial aid, and in many states, drive. The disparities exist between white students and Latino students when it comes to just the availability of necessary classes. and the experience level of the teachers within those communities and the frequency of which the students are disciplined are significantly lower. Latino students in low-income areas don't even have access to the classes necessary for them to properly prepare for college or the workforce, as it is in a white community. 1/4 of high schools within the highest percentage of the Black and Latino students, they don't even offer Algebra 2. After Algebra 1, that is the extent of it. As a result of being systematically undereducated, this community is unfairly categorized as an unmotivated and underachieving academic group. In talking about the community, there's a very strong family foundation, a love for the community in which they reside, and there's frequent interaction between the immediate and extended family members. And in the community, the needs of the family outweigh the needs of the individual. In the media, the focus on immigration completely ignores the historical context of those who were already here long before the U.S. was founded. The mass media can portray them as foreigners, even if they were born here. And our immigration conversation gets heavily shifted by what is portrayed in the media. Some people don't care enough to investigate for themselves what this community stands for. So they'll listen to the media and they just regurgitate what they heard or saw. In terms of the microsystem, the religious setting, this is a culture of very strong faith. And it's a core part of the culture. So the family is probably the strongest value of the community. They look out for their own. And keeping the family unit together is essential. Divorce is not something that is encouraged within this community. Because of their families' adherence to strict gender rules, historically, with gender rules, the Latinas, Hispanic women are often less vocal. Doesn't mean they're not vocal, but they're often less vocal and take a less assertive stand against the males within their families. It is important to note, however, that because of females taking steps to improve themselves economically and socially, some Hispanic and Latina American females are adhering a little less and less to those patriarchal cultures. Amongst the Latino community, when we talked about the African American community and the light skin versus dark skin, similarly within the Hispanic and Latino communities, those who are of lighter skin are viewed as treating more fairly, more privileged than those who are darker. There are a lot of different skin tones. Hispanic and Latina does not come from one area of the world, come from all over. So the varying degrees of skin color, some people will look at a person and never think that they are Latino. And they're shocked. What do you mean? You don't look. That's just, anyway. Language dynamics. Oh, y'all about to get me started. Language dynamics. With the individual, sometimes there is ridicule if they don't speak their native tongue, or if they don't even know the language at all. Or if they speak what is considered a lesser form of the language, Spanglish. Kind of a combination of the two. Cultural coping mechanisms. The way the community copes with stress, they lean on their families. They lean on their faith. The gender roles within the community, the males are generally the head of the house. And the females feel responsible for making sure that they hold that family together through whatever. I have to keep this family together. Some health practices within the community, a lot of neighborhood clinics and emergency room. But there are some challenges that come along with that if you are undocumented. When you are asked for ID, Social Security card, birth certificate, there's a lot of fear within the community of being pulled over. There's a lot of fear of admitting that you're undocumented out of fear that someone's going to threaten to call immigration on you. There's also that medicine cabinet method. You find something to treat it. There's a large number of Latino children who qualify for Medicaid, but who aren't enrolled, possibly because the undocumented parents may be scared to enroll their children. Even if those children were born in the U.S., if the parent is undocumented, there's this level of fear. Communication styles. Keeping undocumented immigrants in mind. Sometimes being cooperative and respectful, people can confuse that with being docile and dependent. That's not what it is. A lot of people just don't want to make trouble out of fear of being deported. Community challenges. So assimilation was implemented as a strategy to get ahead in this country. So the country already views them as someone who's taking America's jobs, less than everyone else. And sometimes assimilation happens to say, no, I am good enough. So I'm going to adapt to this particular culture so that I can rise. Now, the challenge with that within the community, similar to when you went to Catholic school, when you come back to the community, some of them view that as, okay, you've lost your heritage. You've assimilated a little too much. While others work really hard to hang on to their culture and their values. Some people within the community even change their name to assimilate, like from Carlos to Charlie, or Maria to Mary. This gentleman's name was Jose. Well qualified for a lot of jobs. He sent out resumes all over the place. Didn't get a single phone call, no email, no nothing. He took a single letter and changed it. So he went from Jose to Joe. Same resume, same companies, and then the interviews flowed in. The perception of someone from the Hispanic or Latino community is one of someone that we don't particularly care to have you here. We know you're going to work hard, but no, that's okay. When I first saw that, this was a while ago. I know some of you may have seen it a while ago when it first came out. I was just floored. I was like, are you kidding me? IPV within this community. When IPV happens, the number one reason that the Hispanic Latina female does not leave the relationship is because of economic abuse. Usually, she's not the breadwinner. And the struggle to keep the family unit together is so heavy. Think about if she's with someone who's undocumented. Is it really that bad to have them deported? And what if she's undocumented as well? What options does she have? When you have a Spanish-speaking parent and then a child who's growing up in the country speaking English, there's a language barrier between just even the parent and the child. So with ESL classes getting cut, budget cuts, that makes a really even larger language barrier and disparity amongst the community.